Hello. Dear colleagues, come in. Please take your seats and then we are ready to start. Yeah. Distinguished colleagues, dear guests from across Europe and beyond, dear participants, it is both a great honor and personal pleasure to welcome you today to the Innovating Higher Education Conference here in Hagen. The Fernuniversität is delighted to host this year's meeting of the European Association of Distance Teaching Universities, one of the most important and influential forums dedicated to digital transformation of higher education. Over the next 3 days, that's my hope at least, our university will serve as a kind of a living lab for educational researchers, academic leaders, policymakers, students, and all other attendants. Together we are representing the forefront of innovation in open and distance learning. It is inspiring from this perspective to see such a diverse and committed group come together to explore a shared vision that is with us for quite some time, but is renewed every time we meet, to make higher education more inclusive, adaptive, and also more impactful for society. This year's conference theme, Rethinking Higher Education, Engage, Adapt, and Include, reflects the challenges and opportunities we face as universities all over Europe. Adapt. We live in a time of rapid and disruptive technological changes. Digital technologies like AI and data analytics are reshaping not only the ways we learn and we study and we teach, but also how we collaborate and engage with society. Include. We also live in a time of profound demographic transformations. And with it comes a responsibility to open the doors of higher education even wider than ever before. Welcoming new student groups, just to give an example, first-generation refugee students, to open the door for them into the higher education system is not just a strategic goal. It is a social imperative. It is challenging too. It challenges us to rethink how we structure our support, how we structure access, and how flexible we can actually be as higher education institutions. And it reminds us, inclusion is not just a trend for some specific time. It is a core value for modern and open universities. Engage. We also live, and we all know that, and we feel it, in politically challenging times. Times in which extremism, authoritarianism, polarization are no longer some far and distant threats. They are looming around the corner, and they are present all over Europe. And more than that, we are also witnessing unprecedented attacks on science itself, even on our colleagues, on the integrity of our total academic system. This makes our role as universities even more important than ever before. We must not remain neutral observers. We must engage. We must stand up for academic freedom, for democratic values, and for the power of knowledge that has the power to unite us rather than divide. During this conference, yeah, I appreciate it. Some others probably won't, but I appreciate it. During this conference, we will discuss pressing social issues, crucial topic along these lines. So the scientifically informed and reflected use of AI in teaching, research, and also academic administrative processes, personalized learning pathways, and the ever-theme micro-credentials that empower individuals to pursue their own personal learning and educational journeys. New forms of digital certification that demonstrate future skills and support employability. And last but not least, the European perspective that is more important than ever. How can we ensure that higher education remain open, inclusive, accessible to all, and serves our democratic societies? In this particular year, the Fernuniversität is the best place to be to host such a conference. Why is that? Some of you might know that we are still celebrating our 50th anniversary this year, a milestone that reminds us, and me as an over 50-year-old person too, personal experience, the only constant in life is change. And as a university dedicated to lifelong learning, we embrace this principle, not only in theory, but also in our institutional practice. We as a Fernuniversität are changing. Let me share two examples of how we are actually changing and also shaping the future of our institution. We are implementing a 5 million euro project to develop AI based learning analytics, a bold step towards personalized, data-driven education for our institution. And we hope also to share some of these experiences with all of you here in the room, and I know that we also have some presentations with regard to that. We also have built an immersive collaboration hub. Some of you might ask, well, what does a hub here in Hagen has to do with distance education? Our experience is it is very, very fruitful and important because it offers new ways how we can make distance education more experience-based and also more immersive. The Fernuniversität is growing. In terms of student numbers, we are already Germany's largest university, publicly funded. This semester, we will surpass the threshold of 80,000 students. Our student body is becoming increasingly diverse, including a rise of younger students, for whom digital education is not just a convenience, but an expectation for a university. Our name, the Fernuniversität in Hagen, may seem like a contradiction in term. Fern in German means far away, and then there is this link to the local roots here in Hagen. Our answer to this is as follows. We engage not only nationally and internationally, but also locally. One example, the political saloon, politischer Salon, where we address controversial issues within the local community, the city of Hagen, in a format that connects the university and citizens. At the heart of this forum or this initiative is what is often missing in public discourses elsewhere: dialogue between citizens and sciences and mutual listening. Dear colleagues, guests, participants, the challenges of our time in higher education are too great for any single institution to solve. We need networks, we need support systems. This is why this conference matters so much. It is not only about exchanging research findings or institutional practices. It is about building a shared European vision and network, a mission for the future of higher education. It's about ensuring that higher education remains a driving force for democracy, social cohesion, and innovation in our democratic societies in Europe. And that is precisely what EADTU stands for. At the heart of EADTU's mission has always been the belief in international cooperation from the early start on, and strong academic networks, a true European spirit. So hosting this conference here in Hagen is a milestone for our university, our region, and also our city here in Hagen. And we also will have participants here from Hagen who are keen to participate in this conference and to meet scholars from all over Europe. I wish us all an inspiring, thought-provoking, and truly collaborative conference experience. Welcome to Hagen, welcome to the Fernuniversität. And now I hand over to Theo Bastians. And Theo, I don't want to take your manuscript and take my own.
Luckily, he didn't take my glasses too, because... Okay. So, meine lieben Damen und Herren, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests and fellow educators, it's a true pleasure to welcome you to our Higher Education Conference 2025. And for me personally, it's good to be back in Hagen, because my heart will always be partly Fernuni blue, you know that. We are especially honored to be hosted by the Fernuniversität in Hagen, an institution that has been pioneering distance and digital higher education long before it became fashionable, more than 50 years ago. And in fact, Fernuni has been innovating at scale for decades. The rest of us are just trying to keep up. It is therefore fitting that we gather here in Hagen at a university that embodies the values and aspirations behind this year's theme, Rethinking Higher Education, Engage, Adapt and Include.
Bona tarda a tothom, buenas tardes, good afternoon. We meet at a time when a strong, dynamic collaboration across higher education is not just desirable, but essential. Whether we are policymakers, researchers, educators, or digital learning specialists, it's our collective capacity that allows transformation to take root and flourish.
The IHE conference has always been a place where connections are made and ideas, of course, are tested. But this year, more than ever, we ask, how can institutions reimagine their role in a changing world? And these connections are not only technical or institutional, but they are human. And through them, we co-create a more inclusive, resilient, and forward-thinking educational landscape.
One key thread running through our discussions in the bridge between research and education, this year's full research track highlights the importance of grounding innovation in evidence. But let's remember, this is not on a one-way street. Practice-informed research just much as research guides practice. Only in dialogue can we design systems that are both visionary and workable.
And we will also turn our attention to digital and hybrid learning, not just as modes of delivery, but as transformative forces, reshaping this pedagogy, institutional structures, and of course, the learning experience.
Another major theme is personalized learning pathways. Today's learners are not confined to a classroom or a single timeline. Micro-credentials, modular learning, and lifelong frameworks are gaining momentum. They challenge us to rethink curriculum design, credential recognition, and learner support. But they also open new possibilities, reaching underserved groups, closing gaps in access, and offering opportunity to those who might otherwise be left behind.
Mm-hmm. And as we innovate, and Stefan already told us, we must remain vigilant about inclusion. Educational progress cannot come at the expense of equity. Several sessions this week will explore how to serve diverse learners, including those from disadvantaged backgrounds, those with special needs, and those at risk of digital exclusion. Inclusion is never finished work. It must be deliberate and continuous.
An increasingly vital topic in this year's program is interoperability. The ability of systems, platforms, and credentials to speak the same language is no longer a technical detail. It is a strategic opportunity. Learners should be able to move seamlessly between institutions, across sectors, and throughout their lifelong journeys. They require frameworks, yes, but also trust, shared standards, and genuine collaboration. Interoperability ensures innovation does not remain isolated. It enables ecosystems that are truly learner-centered. And let's face it, if our APPs can talk to our coffee machines, surely our university can talk each other.
And finally, let us not lose sight of the human dimension of learning. Flexibility, personalization, and digital access mean little if learners are overwhelmed, disconnected, or unsupported. Mental well-being and belonging are essential for success. As we explore the latest tools and frameworks, let's keep asking, are we creating environments where people, students, and educators alike can thrive?
So, as we begin these days of keynotes, panels, and collaboration, I encourage each of you to engage fully, challenge assumptions, and most importantly, connect. Seek our new partnerships, share your experience, and listen for the insights that might reshape your thinking.
The IHE 2025 conference is not just an event. It's a meeting point for the future of education, a future that is more inclusive, more adaptive, and more engaged than ever before. Thank you, and welcome to our EADTU conference. We try to give an example of cooperation between the Vice President and President. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it's time, and it's very much time now to listen to our keynote presentation, and we are really delighted. It's about personalized learning pathways and micro-credential, two topics we are working on a daily basis. We have here Nayala Wild from FutureLearn and Mike Burnt from AI Campus Stifterverband. We welcome them with a huge applause, and the floor is yours.
My name is Nayeli Wild, Vice President of Strategy for FutureLearn, and I'm joined here by
Mike Burnt. I'm from Stifterverband. We are developing the AI Campus. You are going to hear more about in the next upcoming minutes or hour from Stifterverband in Berlin, Germany. I feel I'm quite nervous, which is extraordinary because I already had a keynote 2 years ago in Istanbul, but I'm going to shake it off, hopefully, in the next minutes. What are we going to talk about today? We are going to start off with an initiative we are both part of with our learning platforms, and where I'm really proud of that we are a member already now for 5 years. I think we became a member in 2020. The EMC, the European MOOC Consortium, is already existing since 2017. And I think it's one of the most exciting initiatives maybe globally, because there we are kind of living the spirit of Europe in digital learning. We are furthermore talking about the changing of the landscape when it comes to digital learning in the last years, with a specific focus on learning pathways and micro-credentials. We are going to explore what we are thinking about what micro-credentials are. And there it becomes really interesting for me out of the perspective of an anthropologist. I'm developing the AI campus, but I'm not a techie. How these micro-credentials, how these frameworks and things are being interpreted in different cultures. We are trying to bring together in the European MOOC consortium. And there, of course, we have the use cases from Naili with FutureLearn and from me when it comes to the AI campus. But let's start with the EMC. What's the EMC and what we are doing? So the interesting thing is we are a collaboration of platforms all over Europe, and we are also a think tank. We are discussing a lot when it comes about what is digital learning or what should digital learning be in the future. And the interesting thing of this think tank is that we all have a product. So if we're thinking about things, we can immediately start to produce things. We can roll them out. We can test it and give it to the learners and see if it works or if we need to change things. And therefore we are in constant, of course, in talks and discussions for, as I said, for the last 8 years, with us being a member for 5 years. And as I said, with these platforms, we have a huge impact on Europe because it unites 7 partners and it includes more than 400 universities all over Europe we are collaborating with. Collaborating means they are producing content for us, but at the same time using this digital content in formal curricula at their local institutions. And there you see we have at the moment, more than 3,000 MOOCs, massive open online courses already live for these institutions, but also for individual learners. But also, this is something we are going to see, more micro formats, which are becoming more and more important because it can be easily integrated into local learning at institutions, at educational institutions. What are the key topics we are discussing about? It's about raising the awareness about MOOCs and digital learning in Germany. We try to influence with concept papers, with frameworks, policy influence makers, and institutional strategies. A huge part of what we are doing is about thinking about quality assurance. So how should digital learning be, that it can be integrated into formal curricula, into formal learning, but that it also can be used for individual learners, that it's kind of entertaining, that it's fun, because a great thing, a great challenge we are facing when we are talking about digital learning is the so-called dropout rates or dropout we are constantly working on, that we are becoming better and better when we are thinking and developing our product. And the interesting thing, of course, with these 7 platforms is that we have multiple languages or courses in multiple languages which can be used in the different countries of the European Union and maybe also outside from our partners. What's interesting as well is, out of my perspective, which is not self-saying, is that we try to shift the perspective and we try to focus on a kind of user-centered approach, not thinking about how the educator think good learning should be, but more what's good from the side of the learners, what they need and what they want to have as a product. Of course, as the AI Campus, for example, we started off as a research and development project. We, of course, do lots of research, learning analytics when it comes to making our products better and better. What is a key product of the European MOOC Consortium? One key product which hopefully can be discussed within the next few days is the so-called Common Micro-Credential Framework. I think it already exists for 5 years in the 1.0 version. And there we try to set the standards of how digital learning should be shaped, how the product should be shaped, that it can be integrated into formal learning. And what's interesting there is, of course, it's absolutely necessary that you have trustful certificates, for example, which can be recognized at different institutions. Credit mobility would be an approach. When you have the standards, you have standards when it comes to learning taxonomy. We are talking about the European qualification framework, but also, and that's one of if you ask me, one of the most interesting parts is the workload when we talk about learning. Yeah, there you see we have the approach, which is really, really good, that a micro-credential should be 100 to 150 hours because it kind of correlates with the credit transfer system, with the European credit transfer system. But there we have the challenge that it might be, that's a question, might be too long for modern learning, because specifically when we're talking about lifelong learning, reskilling, upskilling programs, we have to ask ourselves, does a practitioner, for example, is it possible that he's doing, when he's working 60 to 70 hours a week, that he's doing, for example, a micro degree with a workload of 100 to 150 hours? But that's the thing, it's there and it's setting a standard, and it was absolutely necessary that we have something like that. But as I said, digital learning, and this is something we are going to see now, is always in flux. It's changing with the needs of the learners, and maybe it also needs to have an adaptation of this. Now I'm turning over to Naili. Yeah.
Thank you, Mike. Okay, so lots to think about when it comes to micro-credentials and how we might be thinking about developing version 2.0. But I'd like to start thinking about how the market and the landscape has changed. 5 years has passed since COVID hit us. The face of the world changed, but so did online learning, and it was an accelerated journey that we went through. The market has evolved considerably in the last 5 years. When I think back to the start of that period, for the general population, MOOCs were still a relatively unknown concept. Online degrees were something you didn't really know that you could do, how they worked, or even if they carried the same recognition and credential as an on-campus degree. And alternative pathways to learning were very much operating in the shadows. Nowadays, the idea that you can start learning from a short course, stack up to a micro-credential and acquire credits, and in some cases gain performance-based admission onto a degree, is something more people know they can do, that they can do it online, and they can do it in the comfort of their own home, to their own schedule. And as a result of this, over 1 million learners spend over $2.3 billion annually on non-degree certificates and micro-credentials. To add to this evolving concept of stackable learning, we've seen the advent of large corporations developing hugely successful online certificates, which they have then linked to careers and graduate entry programs. Some of these carry credit and recognition of prior learning onto degrees, and when they've been done well, we know that 10% of learners on an online degree cohort have probably come from an industry certificate. So there's a lot of choice out there for students and a lot of competition for educators. And if that weren't all, with the increased acceptance of online learning around the world came not only the desire for international universities to develop their own online learning programs and degrees, but governments started to officially recognize these programs and fund them as a valid part of their national degree program. This not only opened up cross-market collaboration and consequently more competition, but it also gave way to a plethora of reputable degrees by high-ranking regional universities and a growing acceptance of shorter forms of online skills-based learning to complement traditional formal pathways. We need to evolve to stay ahead. According to Holon IQ, the USA has already seen a sharp increase in the rise of non-degree credentials, and it's estimated that these types of learning will be the most conferred award in US higher education over the next 10 years. But what really is a micro-credential? Whilst many have tried to pin down an official meaning to this form of learning, such as the European MOOC Consortium have done, there is yet no global agreed standard to what this type of program is, and we're still debating about how it can be used effectively. We'd like to give you two perspectives from our respective organizations, AI Campus and FutureLearn, on how we're employing micro-credentials and personalized learning pathways, and open up this debate and discussion during the conference. Over to you, Mike.
Thank you. Yeah, like to start off a bit how we are shaping our product and how we are started off and what's important to us when we are developing our product. So the AI Campus started off in 2019 in the year of the so-called German AI strategy, being fully funded by the German Ministry for Education and Research. So therefore we decided, and we gave us a really broad vision back then. So just remember or remind that it was 2 years before the ChatGPT moment, or 3 years before the ChatGPT moment. So we started off more or less completely. We didn't know in which topic fields and which domains, how deep we want to go in when it comes to the AI. But was absolutely clear to us that we want to be as broad as possible. So for us, it was really important to say we wanted to be with all of our content completely open source and our learning ecosystem. It doesn't matter if we are talking about the learning management system or the Gen AI chatbot we are using it's completely open code, which can be used and adapted. And we see this, that we have like R&D projects coming after us, really copying our ecosystems as well. And we are collaborating with higher education institutions on each level. So for example, what's really interesting is that our learning management system is being hosted by the Fernuniversität in Hagen. So we are really working closely together, developing jointly our product. So everything is free and openly licensed. The only thing we would like to have from educators, from learners who are using us, that they stick with the license. So it has to stay open. So we don't see any sort of competition situation because we see there's this huge challenge, specifically with the AI Act coming into play as well, that we bring open learning when it comes to AI into the European societies. So, and therefore we try that our content is being integrated into the full educational chain. So really started in schools, going to higher education institutions, and then of course collaborating, for example, with federal or state medical chambers, that it comes into further in and upskilling scenarios as well. And the best thing, of course, that it's being integrated into structured scenarios like formal curricula, that you have a sustainable use of the content, and at the same time that we have a constant feedback to make the product better and better out of the perspective of the persons, of the stakeholders who are using our content. And it's now being used, as you see, in the entire chain. As I said, educational stakeholders, of course, they are our key target groups, so lecturers, professors as multipliers, but of course also students, and then companies and the broad society. We are collaborating at the moment with more than 60 partners when it comes to content development, but of course, I think we are at about 130 higher education institutions using us in curricula, and we don't have that many courses, if you see. Yeah? We have 100 courses, and that's really a decision that we are not going the way, for example, like Coursera or edX is doing, that they quite soon had more than 1,000 courses. For us, it's kind of important to keep the portfolio kind of tight and really work intensely on the quality assurance, that it exactly that it fulfills the quality standards we have, for example, in this CMF. And therefore, yeah, we are working together, as you see, not only with universities like the TU Munich, for example, or the Humboldt University in Berlin, or the Fernuniversität in Hagen, but also with foundations, with initiatives like AI for Democracy, where we're working on topics when it comes to really to fake news and stuff like that being produced by AI systems. Maybe a few facts and figures here. So at the moment we have about 45,000 issued certificate and badges. Over here as well, it's really important to us that we are not issue hundreds and hundreds of thousands of certificates. For us, it's really being important that these certificates are being recognized in some sort of scenarios, so that you really get, or the students are getting credits for AI Campus certificates. That's why we're having lots of collaborative certificates with higher education institutions, but that it's also be recognized by employers, and or as I said, like federal police, for example, we are collaborating with, or ministries as well. What's interesting as well is that for us, of course, the key product is our learning platform. But I used to work at a university in Shanghai for 5 years, and they were developing something, they called it a smart learning environment. And to them, it's really important that the learners not just have to come to the learning, but that the learning is also coming to the learners. So basically that the learning is being integrated into software, into applications which are in everyday use. This is why we are also, for example, are on TikTok, why we are on YouTube. We are at the moment developing also like longer videos which can be used and integrated into lectures, for example. And there you see we are pretty successful. So our TikTok channel is basically the most successful product we are having so far. And we really see that school teachers are using these videos into their classroom settings. So it's really about the integration in local learning scenarios. But there, of course, we are kind of going on a pathway where we are where we are not on recognition scenarios. It's really more like non-formal learning. But it's important to us because it's also about like excite people on the topic of AI, to include them, and then maybe they start off with a TikTok video and they end up doing an online course on our platform. Yeah, when it comes to the key product of the AI campus, we really started off like closely having, of course, the micro-credential framework in mind, and we produce like huge courses or micro-degrees, course specialization. For example, what you can see over here, automated machine learning with a workload of 112 hours, which could completely integrate it into a formal curricula. And then, for example, you can get 4 to 5 credits if it's integrated there as kind of substitution, for a lecture. We see that this is happening. For example, we created with this use case one of the first lectures on AI in medicine together with the Universitätsspital in Basel in Switzerland. We started off in Switzerland 5 years ago because the Germans, they weren't that far at the moment. They said AI is not a topic which should be integrated into the medical, in medical study programs. Now they are seeing it differently. We now have like 2 more universities in the federal state of Baden-Württemberg, in Ulm and Freiburg, who are using us more or less in the same way, and not so far from here at the RWTH Technical University in Aachen as well. But what we see more is really that lecturers are taking like bits and pieces, chunks out of our courses and integrate it into their learning. And this was pretty interesting to us. And this we also did in collaboration with the Fernuniversität in Hagen. We developed a second platform, basically, which isn't public, exactly for this purpose. So basically, lecturers can use our content and basically put it and bring it together out of our portfolio and building their own product. And with an LTI integration, so with a single sign-on, they have the possibility to use our platform fully integrated. So this is a product which really came out of this need we saw in the last 5 years. And then we saw specifically since the ChatGPT moment, and more specifically like the AI Act coming into effect, that we need even publicly shorter learning pathways. And therefore you see there we're talking about the public administration. We now have more and more courses, not with a workload of 50, 70 or 100 hours, but more and more courses which are more modular, which are stackable, which are between 3 and 5 hours, which can be easily done, within a week or maybe 2 weeks or within a month, even if you have longer working hours. If we talk about AGIs, there you see, this is something we already asked lecturers 2 years ago. They were asked, or even like policymakers in a AGI context, what do you think our courses or our content is being used at your institution? And there you see it's quite good. We have 38% really integrated into curricula or being used in the area of selectives. But more and more of our content are really like parts of modules, or even like closer like items out of courses are being used to adapt the content to the needs of the students at a certain educational institution. This can be videos, that can be podcasts. So there we see, we're on the level of non-formal learning, but we see non-formal learning is being integrated into formal learning scenarios. So this is, we can clearly see, this can be podcasts, this can be simulations or short coding exercises, for example, when we talk about computer science, but also publications, which can be found on the AI Campus website. And now, I already said, a really interesting thing coming into play or came into effect, it's the so-called Article 4 of the AI Act. It's into effect since February this year, and this makes it mandatory as soon as you are a provider of AI. And this can be everything. This can be a university, but this can be a hospital using a certain AI software, or this can be a small startup. So basically, they have to offer for their staff a kind of upskilling program. And this correlates with a survey we did with our member companies of the Stifterverband last year, that they see a really high demand as well, that it needs to have upskilling programs. And in this context, we saw that it really needs, apart from our, I would say, traditional approach of developing our online courses, it needs to have shorter pathways. And this is something we are developing in every topic field. It doesn't matter if it's school or education, medicine, public administration. We are developing in each topic field, so to fulfill these needs. And what's important there as well, there we create the most quantitatively recognition scenarios of micro-credentials as well, because they need it on a formal level. When we are talking about a ministry, for example, which needs to upskill their staff, they need to have some sort of certificate, a way of documentation where they can see if the employee really has to do this upskilling program. And in this context, we see the recognition scenario, and also we are, for example, being recommended by the Federal Net Agency in Germany. These are basically, this is the institution who are monitoring if this article is being fulfilled. So they published a competence paper on AI 2 months ago, where the AI campus is really part of it. And this was really interesting or important of us, because we didn't know before, because they're, so to say, the framework for the recognition of these short learning pathways was out of nothing, like 4 months ago. 4 months ago there. And to this moment, we knew that it came, that it will come on February, but we didn't know that so many institutions, like in Germany and now even like in German-speaking Europe, are coming to us and say, we need you to get Article 4 covered. Maybe what's interesting, and there we really are on a cultural level, we see the central stakeholders, like within companies or universities, they see the high demand of these upskilling programs. But if you ask individual learners if they really want to have this out of the perspective of companies, you see that the learners aren't really happy that they have to do these upskilling programs, but as we are speaking about Article 4, they have to do it now. And therefore, and this is what makes it really, really interesting, how do we build a product that they like it as well? So how could a product in future could be that it's not just another boring course the learner needs to do just to fulfill Article 4 of the AI Act, but something which can also be entertaining and which can change this perspective as well. Yeah, and then we'll hand over to Naili again. What does it mean when we are talking about the personalization of learning pathways, what we are offering at the moment? Of course, the institutions, the universities producing the content for us, they are building these specializations, these micro-degree programs. So it's kind of curated for them to the learner. And this is something I would say like our learners would trust in most of the ways, because they think, okay, if this from the Charité University Medicine in Berlin, this learning pathway as it is makes sense. As I said, we have the curation of content. There we use the platform as a service offering where lecturers or professors kind of curate the content for their students. And then that is something you see on the right side. We, of course, have a generative AI system, a chatbot, where you can also ask, yeah, I would like to become a data scientist, for example, which kind of courses can lead me to this path? And then it offers, it offers of courses, and it combines courses out of the data it has. The interesting thing is, when we ask our learner, they don't like it that much. They really prefer, if we ask them, what do you prefer, like the chatbot or the professor is curating the content for you? Well, I trust the professor. I don't trust the chatbot. It can, yeah, how do I know that it brings the data together or the algorithm that it brings the data together as I would like to have it? Yeah? And so we are working on this to make the systems better and better. But we have to work, of course, as well to make this product more trustful, that the learners are using it as well in the future. Because like we have like lots of over the support, like learners coming to us and asking us as well, like our content management team. But you can imagine with 120, 150,000 learners, we can't consult each individual what the best learning pathway would be. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'd like to give you a snapshot of how FutureLearn thinks about micro-credentials and what we're doing about personalized learning pathways. But before I do so, I'd like to give you a little bit of context around FutureLearn in case you don't know. We began as a MOOC platform in 2012 and has since evolved our proposition, providing higher education services to partners worldwide, as well as partnering with prestigious universities, governments, and businesses. Offering multiple and diverse partnerships with innovative products and services, we support our partners to deliver lifelong learning and global reach. We harness technology and generative AI, extending our services with innovative delivery models, distribution opportunities, and the opportunity to drive new income streams. With over 22 million learners and over 200 partners delivering courses on our platform, FutureLearn offers a unique proposition which extends from short courses to micro-credentials, to training, degrees, and commercial services for businesses, governments, charities, non-profits, and the like, whilst always ensuring our provision remains available to individuals flexibly and accessibly. Our main guiding star, so to put it, is to drive impact by transforming careers with accessible, lifelong learning. We aim to shape the future of education, addressing key skills gaps with flexible, personalized learning. And lastly, we aim to partner with the world's leading educators to support individuals, organizations, and economies to ensure they fulfill their learning goals on their own terms. I want to start by putting into context the pivotal time of change that we're in. Due to the various macro trends we're seeing, it's anticipated that 170 million jobs are going to be created over the next 5 years. And this growth is expected to be offset by the displacement of 92 million current jobs, resulting in a net growth of 78 million jobs by 2030. Averaged across occupations, this structural labour market churn represents 22% of current employment. Now, with 22% of worker skills being disrupted over the next 5 years, there's a huge imperative for change and a huge imperative to help people upskill and reskill to meet the demands of this changing economy. On a global level, it's anticipated that there'll be a rise in the number of jobs created for big data scientists, fintech engineers, AI and machine learning specialists, and open positions in these fields will outstrip supply. Given that it takes years to alter degree programs, people are going to be looking for short courses and micro-credentials for that up-to-date and relevant education. This will be compounded by the fact that, as mentioned before, 92 million jobs will be displaced, and people in these professions are going to be looking also to acquire skills in transferable areas to enable them to sidestep into another profession. So there's an imperative for change and an even bigger imperative for us to work collaboratively and align on this front to address this impending skills revolution. Now, turning back to FutureLearn, to echo this trend, learners on FutureLearn have evolved significantly over time. When we first began in 2012, the majority of the learners on the platform were turning to short courses for personal interest. Courses in photography, baking, history of Rome did remarkably well. But now, half of our learners are looking for career development, and this percentage is only increasing day by day. Learners on the platform navigate through the content that we create with our partners relatively well. We know that 74% of micro-credential learners come from short courses, and similarly, 50% of degree leads on the platform come from learners who have completed a short course. So it's clear that learners are looking for flexible, stackable education to achieve their goals. Students also want interaction and social learning, and our challenge as educators is to find that sweet spot between hybrid learning and online interactive learning, or learning that simulates the classroom vibe while still being affordable to run and that benefits from the economies of scale that online education can bring. Given that our courses are firmly built on a social pedagogy in their roots, feedback indicates that learners are really engaged throughout their course and they highly value a community learning experience. We thus have higher than average completion rates for our open short courses and a Trustpilot rating of 4.7 out of 5 stars. This enables us to successfully create a funnel between short courses and certificates and make the ecosystem work. Nevertheless, whilst we're able to provide flexible learning pathways, historically it wasn't quite working perfectly. Yes, short courses provide pathways to micro-credentials and degrees, and yes, they're able to provide upskilling opportunities and continue professional development credits. But still the problem lies in that what we call a micro-credential, 10 UK credits, 5 ECTS credits, equivalent to 1 module of a degree, is not accessible enough to truly open up learning and progression onto a degree. Because of the strict entry requirements, embedded credit structure, high costs both for the university to run as well as the learner to embark on, micro-credentials in their current format didn't provide the middle part of the funnel that we were looking for and aspiring for to truly open up access to education. And because they're somewhat still in their infancy, or at least in the UK, they tenuously provided opportunities for upskilling and reskilling. So diving deeper into the feedback we received from our learners currently undertaking micro-credentials and from our partners running them, under the existing micro-credential format, we hear that micro-credentials are expensive to run, given the synchronous nature of their format and the fact that they're running cohorts. Only 35% of students that are taking these micro-credentials are actually looking for credit. And this is not only a misalignment in the course offering, but also leads to lower completion rates for the university as learners aren't motivated enough to complete the course and undertake the final assessment that is linked to credit. With high running costs and the premium that credit provides and carries, comes higher learner fees for the microcredential, which then lead to smaller cohorts and consequently a poor return on investment for universities. Learners find that the microcredentials are too expensive. They want to upskill and reskill, but they're not sure whether they want to do credits or have credits associated with them. They find the pace of learning too rigid and intense. Many of these are postgraduate learners with full-time jobs. Nevertheless, they want a credible certification. They value higher education. They want a structured course that can help them develop deep competencies, and they want their learning to amount for something. Our partners also recognize the value of microcredentials. They want to create groundbreaking programs that address key skills gaps, and they recognize that they need to move quickly to do so. Which is why we formed a small group with some of our partners to ideate the perfect second version of a microcredential. Together with the universities of Leeds, Glasgow, York, Nottingham-Trent, and Cranfield School of Management, we created a new collaborative microcredential framework. The new microcredential framework is designed to offer open access, flexible, high-quality postgraduate education to meet the needs of learners and employers. Microcredentials are postgraduate master's level and are 10 UK credits or 5 ECTS credits each. So we've kept that part of the structure the same. Whilst we have designed the courses to be 10 weeks long and 100 hours of learning, students can still take learning anytime, and they can learn asynchronously and at their own pace. Because of the consistent structure that we've created with our partners, course design and student experience, students can earn credits both onto the university providing that course and their programs, but also if partner universities can establish MOUs to create simple credit recognition processes, credits can be accumulated across institutions. To make the course build straightforward and consistent, we've built a course shell and a design structure on FutureLearn to aid our partners in creating this unified microcredential structure. And last but certainly not least, the new microcredentials have been designed in such a way that learners have the flexibility whether or not to choose and start from a non-credit bearing pathway or a credit bearing pathway. The beauty of this is twofold. In the first instance, the non-credit bearing route can be delivered asynchronously with computer-graded assessments, making it more affordable for the university, and thus can be offered to the student at a much lower price, facilitating that scale and the flexible learning that we're looking for. At a lower price point makes this also a viable option for learners mainly looking for a solid, competent-based education to upskill and reskill with a certificate of completion from a reputable institution. Secondly, students can then top up. They can then take the credit-bearing part of a microcredential, which carries tutor-graded assessment and is run by the university. At this point, learners are enrolled at the university, and because they followed the credit route, they are 100% more likely to complete their studies. By splitting out the synchronous and formal assessment element of a microcredential, this course format then becomes more cost-effective and viable for the university to run, and learners can more affordably build personalized qualifications from quality providers. Now, returning to our flexible learning pathways slide that I showed you earlier, you can now see that by splitting out the credit and non-credit microcredential pathways, learners have multiple access entry points through which to undertake formal higher education, leading to one or many university degrees, as well as the education to help them upskill and reskill. And creating flexible, stackable pathways between informal and formal learning is a key driving force for us at FutureLearn and what we aspire to do. Finally, no presentation can be complete without the mention of AI and the plethora of uses it has to build, manage, and enrich programs, as well as provide students with a more personalized experience. when it comes to creating flexible pathways of learning and supporting learners in this journey, we've recently launched a product called FLX, which is a personalized learning experience platform powered by advanced AI algorithms. The beauty of this tool lies in that not only does it capture key data such as job role, learner aspirations, past experience, but it also factors in personal interests and personality traits to surface to the learner targeted learning programs that are tailored to their development needs. So with this tool in place and a greater cohesion, we now have, between the types of courses and programs that we host on the Future Learn platform, we can provide the learner with flexible pathways to meet them at whatever stage they're at in their learning journey and help them achieve their goals. Thank you. Do we have to? I think we may have a few minutes for discussion and question. Yeah? Okay. So Mike and I had a very interesting conversation when we were thinking about how to present this presentation and what we were going to talk about. And what was really interesting that came about it is how cultural backdrop and acceptance and appetite for online learning changes from country to country, market to market, what we're seeing. So it would be great to hear from you what you think about this and open it up for discussion amongst the room. Other questions that we had were the degree of hybrid versus asynchronous versus in-person. Is it subject specific? Do you need and can you have fully asynchronous learning for topics such as ethics, for example? Or do you need a more confined personal discussion area for learners to really open up about these topics? Credit or no credit? What are learners looking for in a micro-credential? And finally, duration. We go back and forth, 100 hours. Is 100 hours too long? Is it too short? Can learners really master the skills in 60 minutes? We'd love to hear from you, and we'd love you to share what your perspectives are when it comes to these key topics, as well as any other questions that you might have.
Hi, hello. Diogo Casanova. Can you hear me?
We can.
Well, great. I'm only speaking to break the ice, really.
Thank you.
So I have a lot of observations to make and some very provocative comments you made during the presentation. The first one is obviously, I understand that and I'm not saying it's you, but for a lot of people, distance education only started after COVID, but we have a big historical history of distance education in a lot of institutions that are here today. But I understand the rationale for that provocative statement, or at least I felt it as provocative. A second one is the designation of a micro-credential. And I want to go back to the presentation. In terms of what is considered to be a micro-credential, the durations of a micro-credential, the recognition of a micro-credential. For us, we have a huge project of micro-credentials in Portugal, so I didn't say that, but I am representing the Open University of Portugal. We have a very big project which is currently funded by the government, so there is no issue of paying the micro-credential. There is no concern about how much it costs. And there is also no concern about completion because, well, there is a concern about completion, but not from the student perspective, but more to the provider perspective. But the majority of concerns coming from the student is recognition, is what will happen to me after I get these credits coming from a micro-credential. And I do think the credit is important, particularly if it's coming from a higher education background. Credit is our currency. Right, and therefore it's extremely important for us to be able to accredit or to recognize credits as a learning evidence. an interesting thing is that you were saying about 100 hours of learning, and I am in the same kind of framework of mind as you are. I agree that it has to be a smaller bunch of learning or section of learning, and these people are working and they don't have time to commit to 10, 20 CTS. But it is interesting that from a higher education perspective, and I'm pushing this forward as a higher education manager, the discussion from our counterparts in the Portuguese context is moving from 100 hours, 106 hours, or 10 hours to more than that, and not to less than that. And I think this is an interesting question to discuss about some mismatch between how you are seeing micro-credentials in this type of tools. Sorry, it is a tool, but providers, to the one that higher education institutions are looking at, especially because we look at already accredited provision and look at how we can unbundle existing provision to micro-credentials rather than creating them from scratch. I'm not saying we are doing it, but a lot of our higher education sector is doing that. So it's, again, an observation I make, because I do understand where you're coming from, but it's not what the higher education sector is currently developing. And I'm not completely sure. And I look at the geographical map you had there. You, from what I understand, you have 10% from Europe, including Russia, at least in the map. It's a very low number of your views. And I'm not entirely sure whether in this behalf we are similar to American market and the Asian market, which is the biggest market in Future Learn. So it is a question for both of you, obviously, not specifically for looking at you now, but I think it's a question to both of you. How are we able to, in some extent, and I know you work with higher education partners, but how are we able to kind of bridge this mismatch between how you see micro-credential and how currently the higher education sector is looking at micro-credentials?
I'll take this one first. So just to clarify, when I talked about the concept of online learning, it was more from a general perspective. Of course, everybody that's in the online learning environment knows about or has been working on this for years. But for the general population, it wasn't something that we knew about. I wasn't working in online learning before COVID hit. I didn't really know, honestly speaking, about all the different MOOCs. I'd heard about edX, but didn't really know how you could use those courses. And this is speaking from somebody that worked in the education sector, but not within online learning. So that was the kind of key point I was trying to make there. I think when it comes to micro-credentials, the issue isn't so much coming from the university and the university sector. I think it's coming from the student. And when you don't have funding, and it's great to hear that Portugal has funding for micro-credential programs, but when that funding isn't available, we need to think about what is the student thinking about the cost? How are they evaluating the program? Why would they take a micro-credential over all the other forms of learning that are out there to meet their requirements? And so I think it shouldn't be a one-size-fits-all. We can't do that, and it will change from country to country depending on what we have available or what students have available to them at their disposal. But we need to try and work towards a structure and a consistency that actually does provide some kind of level of accessibility where there isn't that funding available. Mike, do you have anything?
Just maybe one thing about the workload, because I think that's also an interesting, we really highlighted it kind of in this presentation, but I think we also have to think about, because that's was happening as I came to China 13 years ago to work there, to really discuss how long does it really take, for example, to get to a certain competency, more like in the way of the constructive alignment. Yeah. So how long does it take that I'm becoming maybe an expert in Python programming? for example, and does it really fits into the curricula as we have them, for example, when it comes to computer science. So I think this is something we have to have a closer look at, and not just keeping, the existing things we are having so far, because that was super interesting as we started to talk with about the study programs in Germany in medicine. As I said, as we went to Switzerland, because we saw the Germans weren't that far 5 years ago. And then they said, okay, you have an online course, it's 80 hours. We don't have a lecture, we don't have a professor in this field at the moment. We just take your online course and we try and we see in the end, do the students have the competency or not? And it was some sort of trial and error, and it kind of worked, yeah? And we now have the university hospital in Ulm. They say, okay, we are not taking the entire course, we are just taking 40 hours of this course, and we edit or we integrate it into a lecture about AI and medicine. And they have now a workload within this lecture of 120 hours. So we see there, as you said, there's no one-fits-all solution. But I think specifically when it comes to this comparably new field of AI and competence development, we have to have a closer look at how long does it take until a student or a learner really get to the competencies we want to have them.
Okay, one last question then.
Don't be as long.
Hello, I am here like a high school, a higher education student, but I am an in-person professor for online learning too. Okay, but when I hear you about the micro-credential, I thinking as a student, I thinking that the micro-credential looks like a good idea, but I am thinking what I want in higher education. I want this degree. Maybe in the OpenEU program that there are a lot of university, maybe we can do something like you say that I study a micro-credential in Hagen University and another in WOG University and complete a few of my old program degree. But if not, for the for a student in the university, I don't watch this micro-credential so good idea, because we have to complete 240 credits, and if not, we have no degree. We are studying, we are working, we have a small time, but if the program of micro-credential is not inside the degree program, maybe like an Erasmus, one university spend some credit or some micro-credential, and I can end my education, then I am not sure that that is a good for a degree student.
An interesting point. I think what we're trying to do is aspire for a different way of learning and how you might actually stack up to a degree. You think that the degree is the only thing that you can do as that higher form, and actually we need to change. We need to enable a student to progress, to build on those learning experience and to have something bigger and better. And I think it's only when we do it together and we have this recognition, which exists in some parts, but it's buried inside the university's FAQs around quality assurance. The student can't find it, and the student doesn't know that they actually could potentially use that credit towards something bigger within that university. So I think we've got an opportunity to change, and it takes time to change, but it needs a uniform perspective as well.
I totally agree. What does this tell us? In fact, it's a cry for flexibility. We are, as institutions in the higher educational framework, we are just too rigid. And society needs a different form and different approach for formal and informal learning. So you guys did a great job. Please give them a hand, our keynote speakers. you will probably be around here for further discussions and all this stuff and questions. So we are going to wrap up this session. I just want to point out at 5:30 there's a bus leaving to our welcome reception. Take that bus and have a drink with us. For the rest, enjoy the afternoon, and we see each other in this session tomorrow morning again. So have a wonderful evening, and again, welcome to Hagen.